Good morning, everyone. Thank you so very much for being here this morning. As you can see, I don't have my big girl shoes on. I can't put them on. I broke my toe on Monday night, so I am kind of tethering myself to this microphone this morning instead of walking around like I typically do. So you may see me start to go away and then come back. It's hard for me to remember, but either the sound of my voice not being loud enough or the pain in my toe will remind me. So hopefully I'll sit right here for you. We have some wonderful new first-time guests today. Let's welcome them. And I also welcome all of you at home that have invited us into your homes through the technology of live streaming. Thank you very much for including us in your day, and just thank you, everyone, for being here. It's wonderful.
So our reading from today is from Jim Palmer. And he says, "You, with a capital Y, have always been whole. You is taking a human journey, which means it's been given a mind and body. With them, we have imagined, constructed, and live inside a dream that is not real. The dream is all about separation. And we think that we are separated from God, separated from life, separated from happiness, separated from peace, separated from freedom, and separated from well-being. There is nothing to fix because there is nothing wrong. All there is to do is awaken from the dream. You are perfect, complete, and whole as you are. You always have been and always will be. You are here to discover this, awaken to it, reconnect with it, and give expression to it. And so it is."
So welcome to those of you who may have just arrived in the sanctuary. I know, skipping all those announcements. So the theme for the month of July is revealing wholeness. And in order to talk about revealing wholeness, I really thought we needed to start at the beginning. So my talk title today is Wholeness. Now, wholeness is the state of being perfectly well in body, mind, and soul. It is the quality or state of being without reservation, without restriction, without exceptions, without qualifications. It is the state of being in which we contain all components, that we are complete, that we're not divided or disjointed. There's nothing within us that is wounded. There's nothing that's injured, nothing that is broken, nothing that is impaired. Wholeness. Wholeness is the concept that we contain all potentials. The potential for any thought or any action or any emotion. Now, while we might not express these potentials in any particular manner, in wholeness, we know that they are within us. These potentials are actually the God qualities that we arrived on the planet with, that essence of God that was imbued with us when we arrived. We express these potentials into the physical, emotional, and mental dimensions of the world. Now, in this wholeness, we have the potential to display either pole. So, for example, good or bad, prosperous or in lack consciousness, productive or lazy, generous or selfish. We have the potential to express either of those poles. Wholeness is also our mental and emotional acceptance of the concept of wholeness. In our acceptance, we do not deny any aspect of ourselves. In the first definition, wholeness exists as a principle, whether we acknowledge it or not. In the second definition, we consciously acknowledge our wholeness, and we have a willingness to follow it, a willingness to express it, a willingness to be with it. Now, wholeness is coming to terms. And in coming to terms, we start with an acknowledgement of the world exactly as it is, the world that is within us and the world that is outside of us. We know that we can't repress or ignore anything that confronts us, whether it's within us or outside of us, but that we have to really be able to take those things and to create peaceful, constructive relationships, because in our wholeness we intuit that those things have something to contribute to our wholeness. Does that make sense? Now, we come to terms even if the conditions are currently disturbing or painful or appear to be negative. We come to terms with them in our wholeness. Wholeness is expansive. It is an acknowledgement that the various parts of ourselves and our world are not autonomous, but instead that they are part of a large interconnected system. The system includes everything that is seen and unseen. Nothing is outside of this system. When we recognize this system, we realize that it has a synergistic character to it, that it actually works all together, and that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So it's synergistic in nature. Wholeness is individuality. The first step towards wholeness is to differentiate and then to clarify all of the parts that are within us, all of the parts that are within our lives. And then we attain wholeness with those distinct parts as we begin to understand our connection to them and how we work within them. Wholeness is relationships. Yes, it is true, we are individuals, but we are also part of many dynamic systems, such as our families or a culture or the universe, for example. Now, because of this interconnectedness, neither the individual person or the individual parts that are within ourselves can be viewed or understood separately. They have to be viewed really as how they are all interconnected with each other. Because while all of these different elements interact with each other on a one-to-one basis, the truth is that each interplay reverberates throughout the entire system and affects every single part. Remember, last week we talked about dropping a pebble into the water and how those ripples go out and how far and how wide they actually extend themselves. We are part of a synchronized, organic, independent whole, like the organs of the human body. Wholeness is balance. So in our wholeness, we have an equal respect for every aspect of our life. We don't favor any one part of it at the expense of others. So, for example, in our wholeness, we would not spend an inordinate amount of time developing our physical bodies at the expense of our spiritual bodies. Out of this base of equal respect, we do allow individualized values to emerge, which would then thereby make, some of those values more important to us and to our expression of them. But we recognize that the contrary is also very worthwhile. So, for example, we may value commitment as a virtue, but we also honor our desire, seemingly opposing desire for freedom. Yes? Now, the truest and simplest message that I can give you today is that God is whole, perfect, and complete. And because we were created by God out of God's stuff, then we too are whole, perfect, and complete. Jim Palmer, who's a former associate minister at the megachurch Willow Creek in Chicago, says, "You are perfect and complete and whole because you are as God made you. Could it be any other way? God's being is the source of your being, and it cannot be diminished, altered, or corrupted. The you knows the truth, is safe and secure, never threatened, content, and at peace. The you remembers that life is happiness and the carefree thrill of being pure being." Do you get it? You don't need anything. You don't need to change anything. You needs no improvement or could even be improved. You already lack nothing. You have always been whole. So I said that it was the truest and the simplest message. I didn't say that it was the easiest to be grounded in, or the easiest to live our lives from, or the easiest to stay connected to when everything and everyone around us is saying something completely different from that. So how can we do it? How can we discover it, awaken to it, reconnect to it, and to give expression to it? Ernest Holmes says we must seek to realize the spiritual universe regardless of any condition which appears. Let me repeat that. We must seek to realize the spiritual universe regardless of any condition which appears. So, we must know beyond a shadow of a doubt that behind all conditions, in back of every single situation, there is the truth. There is God. That anything unlike the goodness of God, unlike the perfection of God, was created out of a belief in separation, was created out of ignorance, was created out of old thoughts and patterns that were not based on the truth of who we are at our very core. As many of you know, the teachings of the science of mind have 10 core concepts. They're depicted in these beautiful art pieces along our wall over here. 10 core concepts. And the 5th core concept is wholeness. The idea behind core concept 5 is the philosophy of inclusion. It arises out of the truth that God is all that there is, that all things seen and unseen are created by and out of the only substance that exists, God. That's it. There is only God. There can be no creation separate from the Creator. Created by God, out of God's stuff, always connected. Yeah, breathe that in, Jesse. Absolutely. Along with this truth is the truth that the essence of God is perfection, goodness, love, and peace, and anything unlike that is simply not the truth. Spirit must be harmonious. Because if it wasn't harmonious with itself, then creation would be chaotic and it would tear itself apart. So it must be harmonious with itself. So even while some situations, experiences, and relationships that we experience in our human lives may look and feel like anything but perfection, goodness, peace, and love, the truth is that they are just as real as they're supposed to be. That we were born with free will. And because of that freedom, we get to choose exactly how we will view and move through the experiences, the circumstances, and the relationships that we encounter in our lives. We have choice in the matter. When we experience things that we call negative, bad, or evil, we have chosen to look through the eyes of separation, the absence of God from our lives. Now, this creates the illusion of opposites, of duality, when if God is all that there is impossible. It's an impossibility if God is all that there is. So Emerson says there is nothing that is inherently good or bad, but our thinking that makes it so. So when we reframe our situations, our experiences, and our relationships from the belief that we were created out of God by God's substance, and therefore right where we are, God is, that everything that God is right there, then the Spirit within is invoked, and perfection, peace, love, and goodness reveal themselves within ourselves and within every circumstance, experience, and relationship of our lives, collectively or individually. It's just simply the way that it works. Ernest Holmes says, looking at things from the belief that they are separate from the divine presence is like looking through dark glasses, while viewing all things as acts and manifestations of the divine presence is to view them as they really are, and to have them give back to us as though God himself had personally brought them to us. I was reminded this morning as I was talking about one of my all-time favorite movies, The Most Exotic Marigold Hotel. And he has a saying in there, right, that says, paraphrasing it, in God, in the end, all things are good. So if it doesn't feel good yet, it simply means it's not the end. Really? Because God is all that there is. So there's a way of looking at everything through a different lens than the one we so often use. A different way of looking at it through God's eyes. Of seeing the gift in it, or the beauty in it, or the thing that we can't quite yet see but that is unfolding, right? Ernest Holmes' description of wholeness states, there is a universe of wholeness, allness, oneness. Spirit is a transcendent, perfect wholeness that in its infinite inclusivity harmoniously embraces all seeming opposites. Huh? So the words that jump out at me from Ernest's idea of wholeness are oneness, infinite inclusivity, and harmoniously embracing. So we'll start with oneness. Now, when I think about oneness, I think about a unity or a union with the divine. I believe it is the union of our human selves with our divine selves, or perhaps it's the union of our masculine energy with our feminine energy, or perhaps it's just simply the union of love and law. Either way, for me, the bottom line is that it is about becoming whole. It is about experiencing oneness. It is about experiencing perfection and unconditional love. If it's about knowing beyond a doubt our unity with God, truly experiencing a unity with the divine, that which is greater than we are. It is a union that can never be broken. We might forget about it, or we might not feel it as strongly in one moment or another, but it is a union that can never be broken. Now, not growing up within any organized religion, I really had no experience of the divine. I didn't know it at the time, but Later, as I looked back on my life, I was really living it with a big, deep, dark hole in the center of my being. When I finally remembered to remember God and my connection with it, then I no longer had that big, deep, dark hole. I no longer had to look outside of myself to fill that hole. I no longer had to look outside of myself to complete myself. I was already whole, perfect, and complete. And the more I stood in that truth, the deeper and more strongly I was grounded in it. The quieter that I became, the more deeply I felt connected. Now, it took time, and it took discipline, and it took prayer. But the invitation today is for each of us to get quiet and to commune with the divine within us, to the God of our being, to begin to see its presence everywhere and in everything. This idea of oneness is eternal, ever-present union with the divine. Our eternal, ever-present union with everything and everyone. The second idea is infinite inclusivity. Now, my guess is that probably each of us has very often in our humanness seen such things that we would call duality, like right up and down, high and low, hot and cold, light and dark, life and death, right and wrong, fire and water. And the list could just go on and on and on. And as human beings, we experience that. Many tangible dualities are thought to be physical manifestations of the duality of yin and yang. And in Chinese medicine, yin and yang are concepts used to describe how apparently opposite or contrary forces are actually complementary forces that interact to form a dynamic system or a dynamic group in which the whole is greater than the sum of the assembled parts. Everything about the universe is dynamic. Everything has yin and yang aspects. They are really just two sides of the same coin. So, for example, think about a shadow. There cannot be a shadow without the light. Wholeness holds all of it in infinite inclusivity. And the last idea of Ernest was this idea of harmoniously embracing. So harmoniously embracing who we are, letting go of who we think we should be, who others think we should be, and harmoniously embracing who we are in this moment, harmoniously embracing the partnership between ourselves and the divine, harmoniously embracing our past and our future so that we can live in this perfect now moment. The invitation is to harmoniously embrace our oneness with everything and everyone on the planet, with the truth behind all religions, with the parts of ourselves that we like and with the parts of ourselves that we don't like so much. The invitation is to make all of it welcome. This is not to say that we don't grow or that we don't deepen our awareness of and our connection with and our ability to express the presence of God that is within us, only that we find a way for all aspects of ourselves, all aspects of our lives, all of our relationships individually and collectively to be in harmony. And most specifically, I'm talking about our relationship with ourselves. Rumi has a poem called The Guest House. It reads, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of all of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. What a lovely way to think about it. If it's all God, then in the end it's all good. So just invite them in. Find a way to welcome them. All the experiences of our lives. Ernest Holmes says that the universe, spirit, is a transcendent, perfect wholeness that in its infinite inclusivity harmoniously embraces all seeming opposites. Do you think that the light gets mad at the dark? Or that the cold gets frustrated with the hot? Or the sun gets upset with the moon? No, there is only harmoniously embracing. There is only goodness, and there is only God. Have you ever had the experience that something that you were going through, or some relationship that you were involved in, or some way that the world was being in the moment, was made somehow more of a challenge, more of a struggle by your resistance to it? Jesse's saying about letting go of resistance. Have you ever sat back and realized that while it did not seem so important in the moment, it was exactly what you needed, that you could not have planned it any more perfectly? I remember, some of you have heard this story, but I remember a time when I missed my connecting flight from Frankfurt to Warsaw, and my luggage I made the flight, but my luggage didn't make the flight. And so I, knew that I was going to have to teach that next day with no luggage and no fresh clothes, and clothes I had been in for however many hours, and no Walmart in Poland. And so, but when I got to my hostel, which my room was on the 6th floor, when I got to the building that the hostel was in, the elevator had a sign on the door, and it said in both English and Polish, "This elevator is broken." So the really good news was, the plan that I could not have planned on my own was that I did not have to carry my 50-pound suitcase up 92 steps, but that the man from United was going to do it for me. Sometimes things just work out for the best. I get a little email every morning from a group called Story People. And today the email was this: today, decide to pretend that all the things that are wrong with the world are actually right, except you maybe can't see it yet. And it's funny how that simple thing will calm you right down. Sometimes these seemingly opposing forces, these imperfections, these new guest house arrivals are exactly what you need to grow spiritually. Allowing yourself to harmoniously embrace all of it without resistance allows that gift to be revealed, allows the divine plan to unfold. Sometimes your mess is your ministry. Now, there's a wonderful story that speaks to this called The Cracked Pot. An elderly Chinese woman had 2 very large pots, and she hung them at the end of a very long pole that she carried across the top of her back, right at the base of her neck. And she would take that pole and those 2 pots all the way down to the stream, which was quite a ways away from her house, and she would fill them up, and then she would carry them back so that she could have water at her home. Now, one of the pots was absolutely perfect and, kind of stuck up about its perfection. And it always delivered a full portion of water when they got back to the house. The other pot had a crack in it. And on the long walks from the stream back to the house, it would be emptying out water all along the way so that when it got back to the house, it was only half full. Now, after 2 years of what the pot felt was like bitter failure, it decided that it was going to talk to the woman. And so one that afternoon down by the stream, he said to her, "I am ashamed of myself. Because of this crack in my side, the water leaks out all the way back to your house." And the old woman smiled. "Did you notice that there are flowers on your side of the path, but not on the other pot's side? That's because I have always known about your flaw. So I planted flower seeds on your side of the path, and every day while we walk back, you water them. For 2 years, I have been able to pick these beautiful flowers to decorate our table. Without you being just the way that you are, there would not be this beauty to grace our house. You are perfect just the way that you are. Even in your imperfections, you are perfect. The you of you needs nothing outside of yourself. The you of you is not broken. It doesn't need fixed. It doesn't need to be changed. It is already whole, perfect, and complete. The truest and the simplest message that I can give you today is that God is whole, perfect, and complete. And because we were created by God, out of God's substance, we are whole, perfect, and complete. Discover it. Awaken to it. Reconnect with it. And be willing to express it out in the world. Know it to be the truth of your being. Please repeat after me. Wholeness is the truth of my being.
Wholeness is the truth of my being.
And so it is. And so it is. Please turn within. How good it is to be able to pause and turn within. And to experience the experience that as I do so, my awareness of the power and presence of God that is within me expands. It fills every fiber of my being. I recognize it as being closer than my very breath. I know it to be a union that I can never be separate from. I know that it is the presence of goodness, of perfection, of peace, and of love. I know that this can't just be true for me. I know that it is true for each and every single one of us, that each of us is a unique and divine expression of the divine, that truly we are its ambassadors on the planet at this time. And it is from that place of wholeness, of unity, of this divine connection between God and life and each other that I speak these words about and for each of us today. Truly knowing that we are spiritual beings having a human incarnation, that we arrived on the planet imbued with potential, imbued with free will, imbued with the power to choose, the power to think again, the power to reframe, the power to see through a different lens, the power to embrace all seeming opposites. Because this is what wholeness is. This is what God does. And so I claim ease and grace for us around living our life this way, around recognizing who we really are at our very core, around recognizing who everything and everyone else is at their very core, and to allow for coming to terms with the things that are going on in our own lives, in our world, and to know that as we cease resisting with so much fear, with so much anger, with so much frustration, with so much doubt, with so much worry, as we cease that we allow the divine plan to unfold, that we allow the highest and best to make itself known. That as we turn away from that which we do not want and turn our attention to that which we do, that we create that experience in our lives. And I know when we create from that place, that creation is whole, perfect, and complete. And I'm so grateful to know this truth, so grateful to speak these words, so grateful for the power of prayer, knowing that these words are loosed into a law that only ever says yes, that they are clothed in form even as they are spoken. And so I speak them and release them with love and gratitude and committed expectation, letting go and letting God be God. And I invite each of us to anchor this prayer for ourselves and for each other and for our world simply by saying, and so it is. Amen.